Welcome to this evening's webinar focusing on community gaming grants. This webinar is, I believe, the 8th in a series that will total approximately 15 topics this season. For those that either could not attend this evening or would like to review the presentation material later, we are editing and posting recordings on the BC Hockey website. Postings occur approximately 1 week after the live sessions. To begin the webinar this evening, so as I mentioned, we muted everybody that's attending, and I'll just make sure to continue doing that as new people are added. Also, this has been done so that it provides a clear presentation and minimal disruption. And we would encourage questions, but due to the large volume of attendees that we're expecting for tonight's webinar, approximately 40, we ask that you pose your questions using the chat box in the bottom right corner, and you can send those to the host, BC Hockey host, when you send your chat. And I can try and monitor that for David, and we can go from there, and I'll try and address the questions as time is permitted. So at this time, it's my pleasure to introduce David Chia, Executive Director of BC Association for Charitable Gaming. Welcome, David, and I will pass over the presenter ball for you here in 1 second.
All right, thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be there. I'm really pleased to be here and to spend some time talking with you about the Community Gaming Grant Program. I'm able to do this through funding also from the province of BC. The purpose of this is to help organizations get their grant right and to get them right more often and to create somebody that you can also ask some questions of as well. So I know I have a fairly lengthy set of slides, and often I take a couple of hours or even 3 to do this workshop. So I don't want to scare you. But there's a lot of content here, and what I'm going to do is spend some time and talk with you about what's in it, and then I'm going to go through the highlights and make this presentation available. So I don't plan to go through all 36 slides, so it's okay. You're not going to have to be here all night, but it's all there, so you can go back and take a look at it. And also, you know, again, it's going to be complicated for you to ask questions, and there may be things that come up that you don't get a chance to ask. And my email is at the end of the slide, and I encourage you to use that and reach out to me individually if you've got questions. I'm happy to answer those, and depending on where you live, I might be able to refer you to someone closer. We have 11 organizations around the province in Campbell River, Courtenay, Victoria, Nanaimo, Prince Rupert, Dawson Creek, Prince George, Kamloops, Kelowna, and in the Fraser Valley. So if there's places, then you know I can refer you to people as well. So the agenda for the night, or what's included in the slides, what I want to get to talk with you about specifically is the organizational eligibility and program eligibility pieces, to talk about compliance and how to use your funds appropriately, so just to minimize your risk of getting nailed with an audit and such. And I found as I was researching this and sort of revising my presentation, a quick compliance checklist. So we'll spend a couple of minutes looking at that, and then that'll just help you. You can pass it on to your treasurers. There is a couple of tutorials that were included in the mail out that you got yesterday. And in that is some tutorials, and you can go to those, and they will walk you through the individual application. But I pulled a few slides out of that. Just I wanted to point out to you a couple of things just so you could be prepared when you go in to do the application online. And then there are a number of slides. I've listed most of them here in the appendix. We may or may not go to those. I'll speak to some of them as we go through, and some of them may relate to a couple of your questions. At the very end is a couple of slides with some key links. So I'll stop there for a minute at the end. But there was some links there to the gaming government website, and to take you to the conditions and the checklist and the guidelines for making your application. And then there's a link to our website, which also helps to try and sort some of it out for you. So I hope this works for you, and I encourage you to ask questions and make this as useful as possible. Overall, there's $165 million that gets divvied out to community groups through gambling programming. There's 135 million of it that comes out through gaming grants, which is really what I'm here to talk about. But there's another 30 million that people raise through raffles, and I'm sure that you all do that. There's a couple of slides at the end as well that just speak a little bit to the raffle program. The average grant size is $27,000. There's 5,300 groups that get grants, and there's about 7,000 applicants. And I understand last year there were 7,000 applicants for about asking for about $240 million. So when you wonder how to get more or why you didn't get as much, that's part of it. There's just a limited amount of funding that's available. There are 3 application periods and 6 sector groups. So we are now in the arts and culture, or arts, culture, and sport application period. And that goes from May 1st, or February 1st to May 31st. And you can see the rest of them. Now, some of you may be involved in organizations that are environment or human social services or service clubs and PACs, and so all of what I'm talking about is applicable there. The program is available for nonprofit community organizations that do community benefit. So if you're making notes, not that you need to, but community benefit is important. Whatever you're writing your proposal to do, it has to be for community benefit. The program, and it also, I'll go into more of this, but it has to be going on for a year. It has to have some defined objectives and some specific activities that you're working towards doing. The maximum available for a local group is $100,000. Regional groups, $225,000, provincial groups, $250,000. A regional is very undefined, but it means you need to have an office in more than one location at minimum. So if you're providing service to a number of communities, or if you have reach into a number of communities, that doesn't cut it. But if you need to have an office or a location in different communities. So again, programs must have clear community benefit. They can't be for members' interests solely. They need to have ongoing and defined objectives. They have to have been in place for a minimum of 12 months before you can request the funding. So you need to have had it funded by other means or self-funded and create, even if it's through volunteers, but it needs to have been in place for at least 12 months before you can go ahead and test it or use it. So they kind of look at this money in a way as bridge money from now to another day. And so you need to, whether that's logical or realistic is a whole other thing. But what you need to be thinking about is how is the program that you're doing going to be sustained, and where's the gap that the gaming funding needs to be used to fill it. It has to be open and accessible and inclusive to all. And so even though your organization might be member or gender based, it's still inclusive, and there needs to be programs that allow kids to be involved, even if, so it absolutely can't be restrictive by race, gender, sex, anything that's going to fall under a human rights issue. And you need to find ways that make it accessible by income too. And for a first-time application and not for subsequent applications, you need to have letters of support. And I think that those are best if they come from people that have been using your program. So I think you're better when you look at those. One of the things that I've been talking about is you want to be able to convey the impact of the work that you do. So you're not asking for funding because it's important or because you need it or because you don't have any other funding. You're asking for funding because the work that you're doing has impact. And so you want to be able to convey the story about what's the impact that you have. The impact on children, or in this case, I'm sure it's about, getting kids involved in your sport. So you want to be able to share some stories and convey some situations about what that impact meant. So where kids talk about, how it changed their sense of self, or parents talk about how Tommy, is a completely different person than he used to be. Those are the reasons why they want to fund it, because that's the community benefit. If you happen to draw in new stars, that's secondary, that's good fortune on your part. But the purpose of this funding is to make it accessible to everybody. So when it comes to organizational eligibility, the organization needs to be a nonprofit and have voluntary, broad-based membership, and it needs to draw its board from within its membership. The programs that you do, specifically the programs that are funded by gaming, need to be maintained by volunteers. So One of the ways that that's done is by volunteer boards, but it's also about making sure that the checks are signed by volunteers and that sort of stuff. There's also a rule that you can't have too much money on hand. So you have to demonstrate financial need in order to be eligible. So it's one thing to do community benefit. You also have to demonstrate financial need. One of the ways that you look at financial need is that you don't have a lot of money on hand. So you need to have less than 50% of your annual budget on hand. And 75% of your funding cannot come from federal or provincial sources. And gaming money is included in that. But gaming money needs to be spent within 12 months of receipt, not necessarily in your season, nor necessarily in your fiscal year. So your accountant, treasurer is going to need to sort of just look at that. When you start to calculate that, that becomes important around where it sits in that line. The funds, again, need to be for direct delivery, so it can't be for indirect delivery. You can't get gaming money and then hire somebody else to do the work. Or you can hire people, but you can't subcontract it out to another service provider. It has to be you're supervising, the volunteers are supervising the work that's getting done. You may hire somebody to do that, but you're still managing it being done. You're not taking a fee and passing it off to someone else. Your board members have to be democratically chosen from within your volunteer base and need to be Canadian, and 2/3 of them need to reside in the province. One of the ways that this is measured is that you have an annual general meeting and you need to provide in your application information about your annual general meeting. So how many people attended the meeting, how many members attended the meeting. And at minimum, there needs to be more than half of more than double of the members of your board. So if you have a board of 10, you need to have 21 people at your AGM. And so what that's demonstrating is that the board is not just the board, it's not self-serving. So because it's a non-for-profit society, they want to see evidence that your membership is participating in the organization. And so sometimes that's a challenge for people, sometimes it's not. I don't know in your circumstance, but you can create activity that will draw people, do an event, do a speaker, do some of your awards, things like that. That will bring people into it so you can get that massive membership that's participating. Your directors cannot be remunerated. They can't receive but they can get their expenses covered. And you need to meet the province's standards for financial accountability. Now, in the guidelines, what we're going to talk about the guidelines. In fact, all that I'm talking about here is drawn directly out of the guidelines. So there's an organization and there's a program. Your organization might be the program, but your organization is different from your program. So you need to be able to describe both. And so what I was just talking about is your organization. Now we're going to talk about your program. So within your minor hockey club, the program that you're funding with gaming money is something that could be distinct from all of your other programs. So that might be your Learn to Skate or your power skating or your community benefit kind of related programs. So that's a portion of your whole organization. So your eligible programs need to provide a direct service to the community, and they need to be responding to a community need. As an applicant, you need to demonstrate, the programs that you're talking about and their eligibility and how they have benefited or are going to benefit. So community benefit is that important language. When it talks about ineligibility, I'm not going to spend a lot of time here, but this is fairly detailed about ineligible. And so part of the way it's presented, when you hear the province make this presentation, what they say is that we spend a lot of time presenting what you cannot do, and that means that you can do what isn't here. So it may look like a long list that's a bit ominous, but as long as you're not on this list, then you can do what you want to do. It fits within it. So it can't be something that's delivered under contract to the feds. It has to have a long-term benefit, or an immediate benefit rather. You can't take your money out of the province. When you're using gaming funds, it has to be used with NBC, and it has to be used on and so this italicized piece here, essential to the direct delivery of the approved program. So one of the things, when you look at what you can with the eligible expenses, it will say travel, for example, right? But if your program is about learn to skate and bringing kids into your club and into your arena, then travel isn't part of your proposal. So if you go off and do a travel off to Kamloops to see another program and ask for funding for, that may be disqualified. So you need to look, when you get your grant, it's going to say a notice to grant, and it's going to tell you what you were approved for. So you need to make sure that the expenses that you're charging to the program fit within that approved piece that's stated in the notice to grant. And that you need to remind yourself, you need to pass that on to your bookkeeper so that they know when they're coding the expenses that they code it correctly as well. And you need to kind of review that, because I find all the time that what I thought I was writing about, my proposal, my idea, isn't always exactly what got funded. And so I may be going off doing what I think is what I'm supposed to be doing, and then come back and go, uh-oh, I forgot that, there's a little piece of this that wasn't picked up. So make sure you pay attention to, there's usually, 1 or 3 bullets that say this is what the funding was for. So that's, then it has to be essential to the direct delivery. So it's got to be, whatever you're doing has to be specific to that program. And so if you need equipment, you can buy it, but it has to be specific. Capital programming, capital funding is basically not funded. They will fund capital projects up to $20,000 total. It can't be, it's not like they'll give you 20 out of a larger amount. The total project has to be no more than 20,000. And as long as it's related to your programming, then that's something that they would consider, or it could be eligible. And again, you have to have your funds dispersed within a year. You need to have a gaming account. It needs to say gaming account on it, and it needs to have your full name. And for banks, that's a problem sometimes, but you can work it into the address line, or you can work it into the signature line. There needs to be proper board authorization to transfer funds. So one of the places where people get caught up is if you can move your money back and forth to your operating account and your gaming account, and you can use gaming money to back spend. So, if I'm not sure the season you're going to get, but if you get your money late, say you get it in November, you can use your operating money to pay the program and start paying in September. But when you get the money in November, then you can pay back your operating account out of your gaming account. But you need to do all of that with an invoice. And sometimes people will say, well, look, I'm going to need, $5,000, so I'm just going to move $5,000 over, and then I'll spend it down, and then I'll tally it up. And that is going to get you into trouble. So if you're going to need money, then you need to do a specific invoice. List the items that you're needing, put out the costs, and then do an invoice from your operating account to your gaming account and draw the money over specifically, and then you're going to be okay. You need to be, if you are an incorporated organization, you don't have to be, but if you are, you must be in good standing with the Registrar of Societies. So make sure you've kind of got your Form 11 filed before you go and do your gaming application. And also make sure that what you're filing in terms of your constitution, bylaws, address, contact people at the registrar is the same as what you've got on file with gaming. When you get into the application, you're going to see right at the beginning, it'll show stuff and ask if those things are correct. So it's not a bad idea now that we're filing our registrar on our registration Form 11 online to pull that up before you go and do your application, because then you can make sure that you've got things right, and if you don't, then you can fix them. Your address. It's not that if you haven't filed, it's too late. But if you need to correct some addresses and stuff, then you can go ahead and do those things, right? Your gaming account summary report needs to have been submitted, and it needs to be submitted within 90 days of your year end. And if you had a gaming license, your gaming event revenue report also needs to be submitted, and that's supposed to be submitted within 90 days of your event. And on your gaming account summary report, it also requests information about your gaming event report. So if you've done licenses in the year and reported on those, you also need to include that, tally that information into your gaming account summary report. The link here to the checklist is there. You need to keep your records for 5 years, and you need to comply with all the conditions. And there is a 2-page document called Gaming Grant Conditions, which I'll point you to at the end. When you get gaming fund, you need to acknowledge the receipt. So all you need to do is include on your website or on your brochures we acknowledge the financial support of the province of British Columbia. You don't need to go further than that. You don't need to do logos. They don't want you to do. They just want you to say, we acknowledge the financial support of the province of BC. So there are two tutorials online. They're quite good. It's a PDF. They just take you through the entire thing. So it's a good idea to go and look at those next. The links are here as well, and I will send this to Carla, and she can forward it out to you, and I'll post it on my website as well. So and you have those too. If you have, so there is also the option of a short form. So the first time you apply, you need to use what they call the regular form. That asks for a program description, a program details, your organizational budgets, your program budgets, and a bunch of other information. And if you get the funding, so just let's make this up again, but if you ask for $50,000 and you get 42, and you're okay with getting 42, and you didn't do a reconsideration, nothing changed, then in year 2 and year 3, you can do the short form, which is just a quicker version. You don't have to rewrite any or add a lot of information to your program description. I think you need to update your program details because things will change from year 1 to year 2 to year 3, but the program description doesn't need to be updated. Then in year 4, you need to do the long form again, and then in year 5 and 6, you can do the short form. If you did a reconsideration, if you've had, which I'll speak briefly to later, but if there's anything different, if you asked for an amount and want more, you need to go back and do a long form. If you asked for a reconsideration and got more, you still need to go back and do a long form. So and it's ultimately your responsibility to get that right. I believe the website says that it will give you access to the form that you're allowed to use, but they don't always get it right, and so it's really your responsibility to know which year you're in and which form you should be using. So you're going to start by going to this link. It's going to take you to this page, and when you get to this page, you'll see there's two places where you can begin. And I have found this. Don't be afraid, because I find that it takes me a number of times to find my way into this. It's a little more complicated than it would like to be, but so if you get frustrated, then I think you're probably almost there. So on your left, it says apply online. There's a drop-down menu in here that you may or may not see immediately, and also here you just click on apply online. And when you get to apply online, you're going to need to select and search your organization. So on all of your communications from gaming, there's what they call an L&G number. It's right here. So you want that number. And so you're going to, there's some introductory fields that you need to fill in terms of who you are. Then you can plug in either the name of your organization over here on the left, or the L&G number here on the right. So just type in your L&G number and click search, and it will pop up your organization. And so you can see, where you're at. If your address is correct, it will already have your society number, your corporation date, and if you notice things that have changed, then you can fix those. Then, and I've skipped some pages here. So this part is about the organizational information. So they're looking for your contact, governance information, your financials. You're going to need to provide here how many people were at your annual general meeting, what was the date of the annual general meeting. You're going to need to provide your organization's financials, so that would be what you gave to your last annual general meeting, what you published to your membership. You're going to need to provide, it just escaped me, but there's another part. So there's a number of things you need to provide that explain, what you need from your organization. So, so that's the part that you need to be prepared for with that information. Then when you get to program, you can have, I think it's up to 4 programs. So it depending on what you do, and that's the kind of thing that we can talk about individually. If you're not sure about that, then you can reach out to me, and we can talk about what you're thinking and maybe how best to package it to make your application work and make it smooth. But you're allowed to do up to 4 programs. So what you're going to do is come into here, and you're going to click Add Program. It's going to open up into another subsection where you're going to explain out your program. And then when you save that, it'll bring you back here, and then you can add another program, or you can carry on. So you're going to need to provide the program name. You're going to need to provide a program description. So you only have an hour to do this. So what you need to do before you go into this is create a folder on your computer, call it your 2016 gaming application, and get the grant checklist and drag everything that you need to do this application into that folder. All of your financials, your program financials, your organizational financials, your Form 11, which you don't need to submit, but it's there for your reference so you can find it. And then you can just, and then you also want to sit down on your own time in your Word document and write your program description. So here, there's room for up to 4,000 characters. But what you should do is just sit down in Word and write it. It doesn't have to be 4,000 characters. You do not want to make it long. You want to be as close to the point as you can be. The people that are, the analysts are reading between 3 and 10 of these a day. So, you know, make it interesting and be respectful. And by doing that, you're going, and be impactful. And by doing that, you're going to help your application come to the fore. So, and you can include some pictures and you can include some of those things in, if you do it in Word, but you can't do it if you try and write it in here. Plus, you're going to run out of time. So all you do is you just you type in here, please see attached file named X. And then you come to here, you go browse, take you into your system, add the file, and then there'll be when you do that, there'll be another button you have to, it'll pop up to confirm that you've got the right file. And then you're there. And if there's other things that you miss, then you can add those things in at these stages, and there's a few of them. They want to know how long your program has been operating. So you need to put at least, 1 year. And then your financials, so you can post these in by old style mail. And you need to click at mail, and you have 2 weeks to get them there. But I would strongly encourage you to take the time to scan that document into your computer and attach it as an email. If you send it by mail, then somebody in their office has to go down and stand at the photocopier and scan it into the system. They don't do the program. It's entirely a paperless program that they do now, so they don't look at your application until it's in paperless. You're farther ahead to do that for yourself. So they're going to ask you how much money you are asking for, and then you need to describe in detail how the grant funds will be used. This does not have a place to attach the file. So that caught me off guard. I didn't remember this section. So you can include this section in the piece that you're writing and pre-write that. My best guess, I've asked but I haven't got an answer yet, but my best guess here, our understanding here is that it's really kind of your work plan. So what are you going to do? What are the details that you're going to work on? It says that it's needs to be no more than 4,000 characters. So I would just build that all into my description, or create a second document and call it details and attach it in the previous up here. Okay? So then once you've done that, then you're at the end of the section, and you want to click Save and Return to Applications. So you're going to click that at the bottom of the page, and then it's going to bring you back to there. Okay? Now we're getting into the sign-off part of the application. So you can see here at the top, and this is something else you need to be prepared for, but you need to provide 2 officers, board members of your organization who are responsible. So that would be your president and your treasurer, most likely. You need to provide 1 submitter. So that could be Carla or your secretary or your volunteer who actually writes the grant for you. And then 1 contact person, and that could be a third, but it could also be one of the officers above. So that's the person that if they have a question, they're going to phone. So make sure that's a person that knows how to answer the question. And the 2 officers are the people that are going to receive the communications. So when you get your letters, it's going to go to the email that you provide here below, and it's going to be addressed to the president and treasurer. When you do your gaming account summary reports, those need to be signed by the treasurer, so that's the logical person to put in here. And then those are the people that are responsible. If your organization makes a mistake or if there's some change that needs to happen, or if there's a communication, then those are the people they're going to want to talk to. So the way this works is that you fill this out for each person, so you can see they want position, name, your address, contact. You're going to need to choose which of these they are: officer, submitter, and contact. And then you can add another one, and another one, and another one. And once you're done that, they want to know your delivery method. So I cut it off, but you'll see that mail is an option, but email is your best preference, because then you're going to get the email right away. And then you need to type in the email that you want used. And then at the end, there's a confirmation, I agree, and submit. So there's a statement of confirmation that you're telling the truth, that you're going to spend the money appropriately, that you're going to follow all the rules, and that, and then you click. So, and you need to agree to that by clicking the check mark there, and then click on submit, and you're almost done. Once you do that, it's going to take you to this page. So lots of times people forget this page, and this looks a little different to me than it was before. It's a little more obvious. So sometimes you forget, and if you don't print this off or save this now, then you've kind of lost your application. You can request it, but that's a hassle, and so by collecting all the data into a folder like I talked about at the beginning, even if you forget it, you still know what you submitted and you have the information to refer to. And here, right where it's highlighted here, you can click there and it'll open up, and then you can print it, and you can even save the whole application as a PDF, and then you're good to go. So, but there's a number of just slides that I'll just point out to you then. So your gaming account summary report is really important. This is the part where you get to tell the story. There's not a lot of place for you to share the story of what you're doing. So the opening, there's an opening and closing balance. Those need to match last year's. So you need to make sure that the closing balance on last year's gaming account summary report is the opening balance on this year's gaming account summary report. You're going to need to list all of your expenses, all your checks, all your void checks. All of those transactions need to be listed. Remember as well to include any license information. And then there's a place for you to talk about what it is that you do. So, and there's only 250 words. It's not a long spot. But you really want to tell a little bit of a story. You want to talk about what happened. You want to say, you know, we did this program and we had whatever 50 kids come, and we were able to reach into a new cultural group, or we were able to reach into a new age group, or we had, you know, 15% greater retention, or Tommy passed grade 3 instead of failing grade 3 like we thought he was going to. Those are the kinds of things, because that's really the community benefit. That's the kind of stuff that you want to share. That's the juicy story. And those are the juicy stories that you want to share around your world. So when you're talking to your community about what you do, and specifically about where you get gaming money, that's the kind of stuff you want to talk about. You want to convey that, because, you know, this is a funder. So as you're speaking with your community and the people that are elected in your community, that's the stuff you want to share, is what it is, that the value that this does and how it strengthens, you know, the programming and services that are available for families and communities. 2 board members need to sign the report. One of those has to be your treasurer. You may include volunteer hours as part of your revenue. So sometimes, you know, gaming does not fund 100% of a program, but it doesn't have to talk, they don't think only in terms of cash. So if you've got a lot of volunteers, coaches, parents, whatever kinds of things that people do that are legitimate volunteering towards your program, and that's again towards your program, then you can include them as a value to offset them as revenue, to offset the revenue they're getting from gaming. And you want to show that in kind. So there are sample forms to use, but, you know, they don't do it quite the way I would. And what I would do is, you've got your activity that you're doing, and then a column of in-kind revenue, or make it easier, gaming revenue. So you want X amount of money from gaming. There's other revenue that your organization may well be putting in. So you put how much revenue you're contributing as an organization towards maybe what you're investing in this program. And then another column that says in kind, where you can show the value of your coaches or the people that provide the food for the program or that help kids tie laces or whatever it is, and add that in there. And then you can show a total on the far side. And you can also, as you keep those columns going all the way down, you can show how those are expensed back out. So gaming can see that its money is being used for X, Y, and Z activities, and the money that you're funding, which may be things that they don't want to fund, are going for A, B, and C activities, and the volunteer funding is going for some of the same, or maybe it's going for E, F, and G activities. So that way you can sort of lay that all out. For easy math and no other good reason, the value that you're able to use is $10 an hour for general labor and $25 for skilled. We can debate for a long time what's skilled and what's unskilled. I'll leave that to you. But so my favorite or sort of best example of that is you think about an IT person, for example. So you've got an IT person who sits on your board of directors. While they're sitting on your board, that doesn't count. So you can't use your board's time as part of your volunteer hours. So while that IT guy is sitting on the board, that 2 hours a month that they do, that doesn't count in this calculation. But should that person come over an hour early and help you fix your software program because you're trying to having a difficulty with Office, that counts, and that's skilled labor. So that's $25 an hour. And if that person comes on a Saturday because you're going to do a cleanup around the rink, that counts as 10. So the same person can be charged in different rates. And if the IT guy takes your computer down to their office and fixes your computer and doesn't charge you, then that can be counted as in-kind revenue at his billable rate, because you have an invoice that's been zeroed out. So if he did it at the office, it's $25 of volunteer time. If he takes it down to his office and does it for $85 an hour and zeroes it out. So I hope that makes sense, but you can see how, depending on how it's done, those are some ways that you can bring people's time into your equation when it comes to revenue. You need to document this, though. So it can't just be, I asked about this, and it can't just be about, oh, we run the program for 2 hours once a week, and there's 2 volunteers, so 2 times 2 times 10. You can do that, but you need to at least have some, if the auditor comes, they're going to want to see the documentation. So you need to have a sign-in sheet or something that says, so that you're able to verify that those hours were received, that value was received and expended. Capital, so they will do minor capital programming. If you need something, I don't know what you might need, but new chairs, new benches in the rink, things like that, that may work. But again, the rink is for everybody, not just your program. So I'm not sure where it would apply to you, but it's possible. When it comes to your $50,000 with your 50% funding restriction, so I've got a couple of things worked into here that double up. So if you're sitting in a spot where you're sitting on more money than you need to have to be eligible, or if you're doing good planning, you're going to be restricting money. So you're going to say, we want to save up for new benches, so we're going to set aside a certain amount of money for a while until we can get those new benches. Now that may be a capital purchase, or it may be an operating purchase. That's hard to say. If it's an operating purchase, you can do that for 3 years. And in the 4th year, then you have the option to request permission from the Executive Director of Gaming of the Community Supports Division to extend that, but he may or may not choose to do that. If you're saving for a capital project, then you're allowed to do that for 5 years. When you do that, there needs to be a motion in the minutes that the auditor can see, and it needs to be included in your financials as a note. If you get externally restricted money, so if somebody donates money to you and says, I'm giving you $1,000 or $10,000, or if somebody dies and leaves you money, and they say they want it to go to X purpose, then it's for X purpose. So absurdly, if they say, I'm going to give you $1,000 and I want you to spend it on paper plates, then that's what it's for. And you're not going to get questioned about that, because that was an external decision on the part of an individual donor who has the authority to say, this is how I want my money spent. So you want to kind of look at the way your money is laid out, and that is a problem for some people. So you want to be thoughtful about that, and you certainly want to be thoughtful about that before you sit down to make your application. So your board needs to be thinking about that in the months ahead of time so that that's all laid out so you can go ahead and write the application with relative simplicity. So gaming funds cannot be used to develop a new program. The program has to be in existence for at least a year. Your programs can evolve, but the gaming looks at this money now more than ever as one-time only funding, or at least annual funding. So your program can change from year to year because they're saying, well, we don't necessarily going to fund you next year. We're not making that commitment. So there can be some evolution in your program, but you can't start a new program, nor can you expand your program. So this is a little bit complicated. I'll try and explain it for a minute. The program that you're doing needs to be, they're going to fund you. They're going to give you X amount of money to do it. There's not a lot of money. So as your program grows, that's a challenge. So that's why you have to think about sustainability earlier. What if it does grow? It's not like you're going to get your gaming money to grow necessarily. And gaming will enhance a program, but they don't expand a program. So that seems funny, but the example is that I've been told before is about a daycare. So you've got a daycare downtown. You've got 20 spaces in that daycare, and you're full. But you know that uptown there's a need for a daycare. There isn't one. There's not a lot of new families that moved in. You ask if you can expand your program uptown. They're going to say no. If you write to them and say, we have a daycare with 20 spaces, and we've got a wait list of a dozen children, and of the, whatever that is, 32 families that are kids that we have, half of them live uptown, so we want to enhance our program by providing a service to an existing wait list in that neighborhood. That would be a considerable application. So if you see the subtlety of the difference, but it has to be an immediate burgeoning need. You need to be able to demonstrate the need for your program to be expanded. It can't be because the economy's changed or I didn't get other funding. It has to be because there's a need for it and I'm enhancing the work that's already being funded. So that too is the kind of thing that I'm happy to dialogue with you about and help you sort out if you're trying to figure out what that means. If you have more questions about it, or if you're looking at how to revise or make your program more relevant to the needs that you have in your community. So you can't use this money for social recreation or invitational travel. So you cannot use this to take your team to the next town and to go to a tournament. You also can't use it for your board or to travel to AGMs or to take retreats. It has to be, so if that's not part of your program, this is irrelevant, but don't ask for it to be for that either. Don't take your gaming money anywhere near fundraising. If there's anything related to fundraising going on, keep your gaming money as far away as possible. It's just going to complicate your life. So don't use it to to buy new jackets or anything like that, or to relate it to anything that's going to be a fundraiser. You can't use it for interest or loans or debts. You can't use it to replace other funding. You cannot use it for professional development. So you can use it to train staff. Or, I'm sorry, you can use it to train volunteers. You cannot use it to train staff. So, and then you cannot use it to subsidize the procurement of a contract. Online, you're going to find some sample forms. So if you're not sure what you're looking for or what you need, or if the way you're presenting the information is the best way, right way, then you can go on there and they have provided you with some forms that show you the way that they would like to see it. Your accountant may adopt that form, may not. Like I said, the way I think works best isn't quite the way they do it. It's not, you're not required to use that form, but you're definitely invited to go and draw from those. Are any questions yet? No? Okay. So reconsideration. This is one of the things that everybody's looking forward to. So I've given you the link as well in the heading here. So that will take you to the paper, the document that talks about reconsideration. Reconsiderations are not just for the gaming grant program. Reconsiderations, that document is for gaming, period. So if you're a casino operator, or if you're a gaming grant applicant, or if you're a citizen needing services and you're not getting what you want and something's gone wrong, this is the document that creates the pathway for there to be a reconsideration. So it's not an appeal. It's not an appeal. It's not a request for a second opinion, and it's not the kind of thing you do just because you think you should have got it. You should have got more. You really need to use this only if there's been an error. So if you have, for instance, sent your financials and they come back and say we've denied you because you didn't send the financials, and you say, well, I have, it shows me that I did, then that's a reconsideration. If I was talking to somebody recently that did a reconsideration because they had sent in an application with quotes and they were not funded for one of the items that they needed to be funded for, because when the PDF came through, the second page was blank. So they're able to show that, wait a minute, it was there, it came out blank, like half of it came out, the other half didn't. So it really needs to be, if you can demonstrate that there's an error, you're not to provide new information or substantially change your application. If you're going to do that, if you're concerned about your application, that's also something that we can talk about. And I can help you, provide you information to help you make the decision that you want to make. You need to make that decision and submit it within 30 days of the notice of grant that you received, or notice of denial that you received. It's a written request or an email to the Executive Director of the Community Support Division, and that man's name is David Horrocks, Horricks. And you need to address each point in the letter. So sometimes they're a bit redundant, so you need to kind of sort your way through those letters and just sort of pull out the information. And I've had those letters before, and often it's really quite an emotional moment because you're counting on this. So it's hard to understand what's being written sometimes. So take a couple of deep breaths and maybe a day or two, and go back and just sit down and read the words that they're writing to you and pick out. And again, this is something where we can help you pick out what the essence is that they're saying. But you need to address each point, and you need to clarify the information on each point where there was a misinterpretation. And they will provide you a decision within 60 days. If you do this, you need to do the regular form next year. And you need to also, so I was talking to a group, they got whatever they got, $25,000. They had asked for $55,000 or something. They got $25,000. They did an appeal or a reconsideration, and they got more money. So when they went around next year, they were expecting to get the $55,000 again, but they only got the $25,000 because that extra money was through a reconsideration, not part of their grant or what their regular application. So if you do a reconsideration, you're starting from scratch again in terms of your applications. If you haven't had an audit, you're liable to get one, because that's the process. They do audits like auditors do every year. They select certain groups. They randomly pull names. If they find that there's some issues going on in a certain sector, that hockey clubs are making a common kind of mistake or a common decision that they don't like, then they'll start to audit hockey clubs to find out how pervasive it is, and then they will start to correct those with you. I've met the director and talked with them, and they assure me, and I've been audited, more importantly, I've been audited 4 or 5 times, and they're all fine. I've made mistakes. I've lost some of the money. We've been able to fix it, and the last audit that I did, they were in and out in 2 hours, and so it's kind of all over the place. So in terms of the community group piece, this is where you want to share this information with your bookkeeper, and you want to spend your money on the fewest things as possible. I found that the best thing I could do was, if I got whatever you get, if you got $10,000, then if you can find one item that's going to take up most of that $10,000, then use it for that. and do the other little stuff, your hydro and all those other little things with your own money. Because when the audit comes, just in terms of your financial reporting too, it just makes it easier if 8,000 goes to one vendor and the other two to another vendor or two vendors. When the auditor comes, they only need to look at 3 files. And so that just makes it very simple for them, and it makes it simple for you. Sometimes I used to think, oh, you know, this makes up 10% of my budget, so I'll just take 10% off of everything, and that's just complicated.
David, I did have a question come in. It's back from a few slides. I don't know if you want to handle it now. Sure. But it's a question regarding the in-kind items you were discussing. So someone's asking if we have experts that are providing training for player development and are coaches, if that would be considered in-kind. Are they being paid to do that event? If that person wants to unmute, they can ask further questions on, or just
talk. My first thought would be yes, you could use that as in-kind. Because I'm going to say, you can correct me if I'm wrong. And you need, as you're making the decision, just think about where are the cutoff points in terms of your sort of honesty about your integrity about your program. But I would think that your coach is being paid to be the coach. And this professional development or training or community or program that you're doing is not really part of his job. So then that would be, then you could call that in kind, and that would be volunteer time that you would be able to bill out at the $25 an hour. Did I get your question right?
I haven't received follow-up.
All right, well, that's okay. Come back to it. If I didn't get it right, or if you need more clarification about it, then email me, or I'm happy to sit on the line for a few minutes at the end as well and take some questions if people have to go, okay? So we're nearly done. So I just got a couple of slides here about licenses, because I'm sure that many of you do 50-50s or ticket raffles, or maybe some of you do Texas Hold'em as a fundraiser. So those require a license that's from a different department. It used to be, up until a year ago almost, that grants and licensing were all in the same, they're all under Gaming Policy Enforcement Branch. But it used to be that there was an executive director of grants and licenses, and they were in the same department. Now that executive director is of grants and responsible gambling, which is the community-based counselors for those who have gambling addictions. Licensing is under another director. However, the processes haven't changed. So there are 4 license options. One of those is exclusively for fairs and exhibitions. Class A ticket licenses are for large events. Class B, well, let me go to this next one. So Class A is for events that are more than $20,000 in gross revenue. There's a $50 fee and a $10 or a 10-week approval period. Class B is less than $20,000 in gross revenue. It's a $25 fee and 3 working days for approval. And a Class D is for $5,000 or less in gross revenue and a maximum of $2 ticket. So, and it's a $10 fee with 3 working days. That's really your 50-50, that's where it fits into a Class D. And some of those small, like I say, under $2 tickets. If you're going to do something, even if it's a small raffle, if you're going to make $4,000, but if you're selling your tickets for $5, then you need to go back up to the Class B. And there are online that you will find guidelines for your licensing. So that'll explain all of the details about what you need to do to get a license. And then now we're on to the key documents. So I've spoke about some of these, referenced some of these. The grant starting page we've talked about a few times, so that's just how to get to that first page to get started to make your application. And when I showed you the slides, you'll find that apply online in I think, on the left on that page. This is the summary page. So there's 3 documents that are fundamental that you need to have and read. The first one is the Gaming Grant Guidelines. So it's about a 12 or 15-page paper. So they've summarized this whole program into 15 pages, which I think is exceptional. It's all of what I've talked about pretty much is pulled out of there. The challenge with that document is that there's a lot of subtle little places that you miss things. So, you know, so you need to read it relatively thoroughly. And remember, I mentioned to you community benefit and direct delivery of the approved program. Those are important terms to remember when you're writing your grant and when you're making your expense decisions. The next document is a 2 or 4 page, I just don't remember, it's 4 pages I think, community gaming grant conditions. So that's once you get your grant, these are the conditions under which you can spend your money. So you need to, that's the one that you need to read if you're the program manager, but that's the one you need to get to your bookkeeper and your treasurer so that they can make sure that they account for your expenses appropriately, and if there's an error in your expenses, that they can catch it before it goes too far. And then the last one is the pre-application checklist. Now there's 2 of them, one for the regular form and one for the long form. Those are a couple of pages long, and it's just everything you need to get into that folder. So when you're going to make that, getting ready to do your application, you're going to create that 2016 gaming grant folder. Everything that you need to put in that folder before you sit down to do your application, you'll find in the checklist. And that should get you ready. So, and then a couple of websites. You know, I've got, so our website and the gaming website, which I've referenced to you a few times. And if you want to jot down my email, so executive director at bcacg.com. And I'm going to just quickly, if I can, take you to my website. Okay.
While you're doing that, can I read out another question we got here, David?
Yep, you can.
Okay, it says, could other grants an association may receive in a year have a negative effect on the amount of funds given through the gaming grant, i.e., if your revenues show other grant funds, could the gaming grant office give us less funds? Well, yes.
Where the challenge will come, where it's a specific absolute yes, is if that puts you over the 50% piece. And again, gaming's looking for sustainability, and they're looking to get the money to go to as many people as possible. So if you have other money, then they're going to say, well, you've got it, and I'm going to give it to someone else. It's kind of a funny way to deal with, right? But so it's not to discourage you from getting other sources of revenue, but and it's not that they're going to stop immediately, but you need to demonstrate community benefit and you need to demonstrate financial need. How's that? So our website then, just I've shown you the gaming website. You've looked at it. So this is their website. So you're going to, and this is the one that I'm showing you the link to. So it sort of rehashes everything there. Our website is at bcacg.com, and under resources here, under grants, community grants there. Actually, yes, community gaming grants there is I've got some links as well. So it's not like it's fancy, and when you go onto their link, so determining the correct type of grant, when you go to their link, it still takes you to a big page. But so if you get lost, I find I get lost on their page often. So if you're getting lost, maybe coming to our page will help direct you a little differently. And also off of our page, right here under workshops and tutorials, is where I will post this presentation. So I haven't posted one for a while, so it might take me a couple of minutes to figure out how to do it. But in a few days, you will find this presentation posted here, and I will also send it to Carla so she can share it with you. But if you get lost, it's there. And again, also, if I could show you one more thing. Oh, here. So if those of you that are around the province, there are community charitable gaming associations around the province. And so if you come to this page, this will show you where they are and give you a link to their website. Okay? So if you have any difficulty with any of that, again, I encourage you to contact me, and my phone number is up in the corner on the website, and I've given you my email. And if there's any questions, I'm happy to take those too. Good. Well, I'm really glad to have been able to be part of your learning seminar and to be able to reach out to people across the province and talk about gaming grants. I hope it was useful to you, and not to overstate it. But again, if you have a question, please don't hesitate to send me a note, and I'll do my best to be helpful for you.
Great. Thanks again, David, for joining us. And once you get that presentation to us, we'll circulate it to everyone who applied to participate on today's seminar here.